Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, I wanted to just give some general advice for year end, but just in the Big Four in general. And one of the key things to consider in your career is creating connections with the people that you work with. And a lot of times in accounting, this can be problematic and difficult because most people are just awkward. It's just the nature of accounting. But one thing that I've learned over many years is that people want to tell their stories. They want to tell their personal stories. They want to tell stories about TV shows they're watching, etc. And a lot of times you just want to listen to those stories. You don't want to talk on top of that. You don't want to start speaking before that person is done speaking. If you listen to people's stories, ask them key questions, then you'll develop connections. And that's really one of the most important things of the Big Four accounting firms, whether you're dealing with your internal teams or a client. Even clients like to tell long stories, and most times their friends, their family members don't listen to them or get tired of them telling their stories. And you can tell these type of people that like to talk, you can tell them very easily. But even the people that don't like to talk, they probably have something on their mind that they would like to discuss with something else, or you might have to dig a little bit deeper. But that, to me, that's very important. And that's one of the biggest lessons that you can take into the Big Four accounting firms. But also, you need to kind of like start stacking up these personal stories and connections with people, because if you've sat there and you listen to them multiple times, especially during a tough time in their lives. For example, a lot of people are dealing with COVID right now. A lot of people are going to have their own COVID stories and are going to want to say something, especially because it's in the news. So if they see something in the news and they can relate to it personally, then they're going to want to talk about it. And the more times you interact with people and listen to their stories when they need somebody to talk to, the better picture of you they're going to have in their mind. So that's what you need to think about during this year end, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with people during year end, whether it's in person or it's on a Zoom call. And this is where you rack up all the points for the rest of the year. Maybe for you, this isn't the busiest time of year, but whenever your busy time is, that's when you make big leaps in your career, making personal connections, learning, getting all the hours that you need for your performance year. That's when all of that counts the most. But I also wanted to relate this to recent stories we've seen in the headlines about scandals and ethical problems. You want to connect with people, but you don't want to let them take advantage of you, especially the unethical people. You don't want to do unethical things just because you connect with somebody, because people can take advantage of you. And like we said this week with KPMG and the Carillion thing, people are blaming each other, and they think just because they're friends with somebody that person will look out for them. That's not always the case, and especially in the Big Four accounting firms, you need to make sure that you don't do unethical things, because the opportunity is there. Or you might be able to let some small things slide. Not everything can be done perfectly ethically. We all know this in the Big Four accounting firms. It's really hard to do everything ethically because there's so much to do. But you can't let big things slide, and you can't cover up for other people. Like, you shouldn't be covering up a faulty audit report for people. You shouldn't work with unethical people. You shouldn't get close to unethical people. You're going to have to work with them throughout your career. There's no way getting around it in accounting, but that doesn't mean that you should do everything you can to get away from them. You shouldn't be working with those people. But that's just something to keep in mind in the Big Four accounting firms. But during busy season, whenever your busy season is, you need to be making connections, and that's when you need to be making your complete year. You need to get as many hours as you can, as many experiences, and as many good experiences with the people that you work with, and especially your supervisors. That's where you're going to make the big leaps above everybody else in your career, and you're just going to see it year after year. And you have to be able to spot those times. You have to be able to take advantage of them, joke around, lean into some questions that you want to ask people, because that's where you really make the difference. You want to have good experiences, because you're not always going to have good experiences either. You're going to have some bad times with people. You're going to have to push back. You're going to have to argue. But as long as you have those good experiences and enough of them, especially when people are vulnerable, then it really adds up. But that's the podcast for today. Just wanted to provide that advice. So make sure to subscribe to this podcast to get more advice and future updates. And also check out the show notes for useful links. Thanks for listening.